They destroyed her canvas in front of everyone, ripped apart 6 months of work like it was nothing. But they had no idea what happened to their cars the next morning. Sometimes the quiet ones have the loudest voices. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Lincoln High School buzzed with its usual morning chaos. Students rushed through hallways cluttered with college banners and homecoming decorations, their voices echoing off worn linoleum floors. Among them moved a figure that seemed to glide through the crowds unnoticed, Maya Rodriguez, 17, with paint stained fingers and eyes that caught details others missed. Maya had perfected the art of invisibility. She knew exactly which routes to take between classes to avoid the popular kids, which bathroom stalls stayed empty during lunch, and how to time her locker visits when the hallways were least crowded. Her backpack always carried the same essentials: textbooks, sketching supplies, and a worn notebook filled with intricate drawings that no one ever saw. The art room was her sanctuary. Room 247, tucked away in the building's oldest wing, smelled perpetually of acrylic paint and possibility. While other students complained about their required art credit, Maya arrived early every morning and stayed late every afternoon. Mrs. Chun, the art teacher, had grown accustomed to finding Maya already at work when she unlocked the room at 7:30. "Morning, Maya," Mrs. Chun would say, setting down her coffee. "Working on the portfolio piece again?" Maya would nod, brush in hand, completely absorbed in her canvas. The portfolio piece, a massive oil painting she'd been developing for 6 months, was her ticket to the Rhode Island School of Design. Every brushstroke was deliberate, every color choice calculated. The painting depicted an urban landscape where realistic buildings melted into abstract swirls of color, representing the hidden beauty in everyday city life. But Maya harbored a secret that would have shocked her classmates and teachers alike. While they saw her as the quiet art student who never spoke up in class, she lived a double life after dark. When the sun went down and the city settled into its nighttime rhythm, Maya became Ghost, one of the most talented graffiti artists in the underground scene. It started 3 years ago when her older brother, Carlos, took her to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. The massive space had been transformed into a gallery of street art, with pieces that ranged from simple tags to elaborate murals that covered entire walls. Maya had stood there, mesmerized, watching artists work with spray cans like she used brushes. "You want to try?" Carlos had asked, handing her a can of midnight blue paint. That first night, Maya discovered something that classroom art had never given her: pure, unbridled freedom. No rules about composition, no grades, no pressure to conform to academic standards. Just her vision and the wall in front of her. She took to it naturally, developing a style that blended her classical training with the raw energy of street art. Over the years, Maya had become legendary in the underground community. Her pieces appeared overnight on abandoned buildings, tunnel walls, and forgotten spaces throughout the city. She specialized in photorealistic portraits combined with flowing, abstract elements, faces that seemed to emerge from swirling galaxies of color. Other artists knew her work immediately, but nobody knew her identity. The irony wasn't lost on her. At school, she was nobody: the girl who ate lunch alone, who never raised her hand in class, who teachers barely remembered existed. But in the streets, Ghost was respected, admired, even feared by rival artists who couldn't match her skill. Maya's mornings followed a rigid routine. She'd wake at 5:30, shower off any remnants of paint from the night before, and carefully select clothes that gave no hint of her nocturnal activities. Conservative jeans, plain t-shirts, a worn denim jacket that had belonged to her father. Her mother, Elena, worked double shifts at the hospital and rarely saw Maya before school, but she always left a note on the kitchen counter: "Mia, remember to eat breakfast. Love you." Maya would grab an apple and her art supplies, then make the 20-minute walk to school. The route took her past several of her own pieces: a mural of a girl with butterfly wings on the side of a bodega, a geometric pattern that transformed a utility box into a work of art. She felt a secret thrill each time she passed them, knowing that hundreds of people saw her work daily without knowing who created it. Lincoln High's social hierarchy was as rigid as any medieval caste system. At the top sat the athletes and their girlfriends, followed by the theater kids and honor students. Below them were the various cliques, goths, gamers, band members, each with their own designated spaces and unwritten rules. And at the bottom, invisible to most, were students like Maya who didn't fit into any group. The popular crowd was ruled by 3 students who seemed to have stepped out of a teen movie: Brandon Walsh, the quarterback with perfect teeth and a trust fund; Tiffany Chen, the head cheerleader whose Instagram had 50,000 followers; and Derek Morrison, the class president who'd already been accepted to Harvard. They moved through the school like royalty, surrounded by an ever-changing court of admirers and wannabes. Maya had learned to navigate around them like obstacles in a video game. She knew their schedules, their hangout spots, their patterns. When they gathered by the main entrance each morning, she used the side door. When they claimed the center tables in the cafeteria, she found a quiet corner near the windows. It was a delicate dance of avoidance that had kept her safely invisible for 3 years, but invisibility came with a price. Maya watched her classmates form friendships, plan parties, and create memories while she remained on the outside. She told herself it didn't matter, that she was above their petty dramas and social games. Yet sometimes, late at night as she worked on a piece, she wondered what it would be like to belong somewhere, to have people who knew her name and actually cared about her opinions. The art room was the only place where Maya felt truly herself. Surrounded by canvases and easels, breathing in the familiar scent of oil paint and turpentine, she could forget about social hierarchies and teenage politics. Here, her work spoke for itself. Mrs. Chun had submitted several of Maya's pieces to regional competitions, and they'd won awards that now hung in the display case outside the principal's office. "You have real talent," Mrs. Chun told her regularly. "The kind that could take you anywhere you want to go." Maya's portfolio piece was her masterwork, a painting that captured everything she'd learned about both classical and street art. The canvas measured 4 feet by 6 feet, and every inch was filled with intricate detail. The foreground showed a realistic cityscape at dawn, with buildings rendered in precise architectural detail. But as the eye moved upward, the buildings began to dissolve into abstract swirls of color that suggested movement, energy, and possibility, hidden within. The abstract elements were faces, subtle portraits of people Maya had observed throughout her life. A homeless man who sat outside the corner store, rendered in shades of blue and gray. A little girl who played in the park near her house, her face emerging from golden swirls that suggested sunlight. Maya's mother, tired but beautiful, her features formed by gentle brushstrokes of brown and amber. The painting was Maya's love letter to the city, to the people who inhabited its spaces, and to the art that connected them all. She'd spent countless hours perfecting each element, sometimes working so late that the janitor had to remind her to leave the building. "This could be your ticket to RISD," Mrs. Chun said one afternoon, studying the nearly complete canvas. "I've never seen a student work this sophisticated." Maya smiled quietly, cleaning her brushes with methodical precision. She'd been dreaming of art school since she was 12, imagining herself in studios filled with other serious artists, learning from masters, developing her voice. The Rhode Island School of Design represented everything she wanted: artistic freedom, intellectual challenge, and escape from the suffocating social dynamics of high school. But dreams felt dangerous to Maya. She'd learned not to want things too much, because disappointment hurts less when you don't allow yourself to hope. So she kept her ambitions carefully contained, shared only with Mrs. Chun and the canvas. that slowly came to life under her hands. The weeks leading up to the regional art competition were intense. Maya spent every free moment in the art room, adding final details to her portfolio piece. She'd arrive at school early, skip lunch, and stay until the building closed. Her mother noticed the change in her routine and left encouraging notes with her breakfast. "Follow your dreams, Mia. Papa would be so proud." Maya's father had been an artist too, though he'd never made it his career. He'd worked construction during the day and painted at night, filling their small apartment with canvases that captured the beauty he saw in everyday life. He died when Maya was 13, leaving behind a legacy of unfinished paintings and a daughter who'd inherited his eye for seeing art in unexpected places. As the competition deadline approached, Maya felt a mixture of excitement and terror. This was her chance to prove herself, to show that the quiet girl in the corner had something valuable to offer the world. But it also meant making herself visible in a way that felt dangerous after years of careful anonymity. She didn't notice Brandon Walsh watching her work one afternoon, or see the cruel smile that crossed his face when he realized what she was creating. She was too absorbed in her art to pay attention to the whispered conversations happening just outside the art room, or to notice how certain students had started looking at her with new interest. Maya was focused on her painting, on the dreams it represented, on the future it might unlock. She had no idea that her carefully constructed invisibility was about to be shattered in the most brutal way possible. The morning of October 15th started like any other for Maya Rodriguez. She woke before her alarm, her body still humming with the adrenaline from the previous night's work. She'd completed a massive piece on the side of an abandoned textile factory, a portrait of a woman's face emerging from a storm of color, her eyes filled with determination and pain. The piece had taken her 4 hours to complete, working by the light of her phone's flashlight and the distant glow of street lamps. Maya showered quickly, scrubbing away the faint traces of spray paint from under her fingernails. She'd gotten careless last night, too absorbed in the work to properly protect her hands. She made a mental note to be more careful. Maintaining her secret identity required constant vigilance. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The walk to school took her past the textile factory, and she couldn't resist a quick glance at her work. In the morning light, the piece looked even more striking. The woman's face seemed to emerge from the wall itself, as if the brick and mortar had been waiting centuries for someone to reveal the art hidden within. A small crowd had already gathered, phones out, capturing images that would soon flood social media. Maya allowed herself a moment of satisfaction before continuing to school. This was the closest she'd ever come to being caught. Several people had been walking nearby when she'd finished, and she'd had to duck into the shadows to avoid being seen. But the risk had been worth it. The piece was her best work yet, a perfect fusion of her classical training and street art instincts. At Lincoln High, the buzz of morning activity felt different somehow. Students clustered in excited groups, their voices carrying an edge of anticipation that Maya couldn't quite place. She made her way to her locker, keeping her head down and her movements economical. The hallway was more crowded than usual, with students who typically wouldn't be caught dead in the academic wing, mingling with the honor students and artists. "Did you see the ghost piece?" a voice said behind her. "It's everywhere online." Maya's heart skipped. She turned slightly, pretending to search for something in her locker while straining to hear the conversation. "My cousin shared it from downtown," another student replied. "It's got like 20,000 likes already. This ghost person is insane." Maya felt a warm rush of pride mixed with anxiety. Fame was intoxicating, but it was also dangerous. The more attention Ghost received, the harder it became to maintain her anonymity. She'd been featured in several art blogs and underground magazines, always described as the mysterious artist known only as Ghost. But popularity brought scrutiny, and Maya knew that one mistake could expose everything. The art room was her refuge. As always, Mrs. Chun was already there, setting up supplies for the day's classes. She looked up as Maya entered, her face brightening, with the kind of genuine warmth that Maya rarely encountered at school. "Perfect timing," Mrs. Chun said. "I wanted to talk to you about the competition submissions." Maya's stomach tightened. The regional competition deadline was only days away, and her portfolio piece was nearly complete. She'd been working on it for 6 months, pouring every technique she'd learned into creating something that would showcase her full range as an artist. "The judging panel includes someone from RISD," Mrs. Chun continued, moving to Maya's easel where the massive canvas waited. "Dr. Sarah Williams. She's head of their undergraduate admissions committee." Maya's hands trembled slightly as she set down her backpack. This was it, the moment she'd been working toward for years. The Rhode Island School of Design had been her dream since she was 12 years old, when she'd first seen images of their studios filled with serious artists creating work that mattered. "I think you have a real chance," Mrs. Chun said quietly. "This piece, it's extraordinary, Maya. It shows technical mastery, emotional depth, and a unique vision. Everything they're looking for." Maya nodded, not trusting her voice. She'd learned not to let herself hope too much, but the possibility of art school, of a place where she could be herself without hiding, felt like a lifeline. The morning passed in a blur of classes, where Maya barely spoke. She moved through the hallways, like a ghost, which had become her natural state over the years. But today felt different. She caught glimpses of conversations that stopped when she passed, and noticed students looking at her with curiosity rather than their usual indifference. It wasn't until lunch that she understood why Maya had just settled into her usual spot in the cafeteria, a corner table near the windows, where she could eat in peace while sketching in her notebook when she heard her name being called. Not whispered or mentioned casually, but called out loud enough for half the cafeteria to hear. "Maya Rodriguez." She looked up to see Brandon Walsh standing near the center tables, his trademark smirk firmly in place. Around him, his usual entourage had gathered: Tiffany Chun with her perfect makeup and designer clothes, Derek Morrison with his pressed khakis and class president pin, and a handful of other students who orbited around them like satellites. Maya's instinct was to look away, to pretend she hadn't heard. But something in Brandon's tone made her pause. There was a predatory quality to his smile that sent alarm bells ringing in her head. "We need to talk," Brandon said, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet cafeteria. "About your art." Maya's blood went cold. She glanced around the room, realizing that what felt like hundreds of eyes were now focused on her. Students had turned in their seats, phones were being pulled out, and the usual cafeteria chatter had died to a whisper. "I don't know what you're talking about," Maya managed, her voice barely audible. Brandon's smile widened. "Oh, I think you do. See, my girlfriend Tiffany has been doing some research, haven't you, babe?" Tiffany stepped forward, her phone held high so everyone could see the screen. "Look familiar?" she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Maya's heart stopped. On Tiffany's phone was a photo of her latest piece, the woman's face emerging from the storm of color that she'd completed just hours before. But it wasn't just any photo. It was a screenshot from an Instagram story, and in the corner of the image, barely visible but unmistakably there, was Maya's reflection in a window. "Ghost," Tiffany announced to the room. "Meet Maya Rodriguez, the shy little art nerd who thinks she's some kind of underground legend." The cafeteria erupted. Students pulled out their phones, frantically searching for Ghost's work online. Maya could hear fragments of conversation. "No way. The quiet girl? She's actually famous?" But it all felt like it was coming from very far away. Maya's carefully constructed world was crumbling around her. For 3 years, she'd maintained perfect separation between her two identities. At school, she was nobody invisible, forgettable, safe. On the streets, she was ghost respected, admired, feared by other artists who couldn't match her skill. The two worlds were never supposed to meet. So here's what I'm thinking, Brandon continued, clearly enjoying the attention. If you're going to be tagging buildings around town, maybe you should ask permission first. My dad owns half the properties downtown, and he's not too happy about having to pay for graffiti removal. Maya found her voice. I never tagged any of your father's buildings. Really? Derek Morrison stepped forward, his phone already loaded with evidence. Because this looks like the Morrison Law Office building to me. The image showed a piece Maya had created 6 months ago, a geometric pattern that transformed a blank wall into something beautiful. She'd been careful to choose a wall that looked abandoned, covered in old tags and years of neglect. She'd had no idea it belonged to Derek's family. That wall was already covered in graffiti, Maya said quietly. I was making it better. Making it better? Tiffany laughed, a sound like breaking glass. You call vandalism making it better? God, you're even more delusional than I thought. Maya could feel the walls closing in. Every student in the cafeteria was watching now, their phones out, recording everything. She knew that within minutes, this would be all over social media. Her secret identity, her carefully maintained anonymity, her dreams of art school, all of it was being destroyed in real time. Here's the thing, Brandon said, moving closer to Maya's table. My dad's a businessman. He believes in consequences. And consequences for vandalism usually involve the police. Maya's chest tightened. She'd been careful to avoid any illegal activity beyond the graffiti itself. No breaking and entering, no destruction of property, no gang involvement. But she was 17, and even misdemeanor charges could destroy her chances of getting into art school. Unless, Brandon continued, we can work something out. Maya looked up at him, recognizing the trap, but unable to see any way out. What do you want? Well, since you're so talented, Brandon said, his voice dripping with sarcasm, maybe you could use those skills for something productive. My car could use some artistic enhancement. The cafeteria filled with laughter. Maya realized what he was asking. He wanted her to humiliate herself by decorating his car, like some kind of personal servant. It was a power play, designed to put her in her place while entertaining his friends. I don't do cars, Maya said quietly. Oh, but you will, Tiffany interjected. Because if you don't, Brandon's dad will have you arrested for vandalism. And then everyone will know that the famous ghost is just a criminal. Maya felt trapped. She'd spent years building her reputation as Ghost, creating art that brought beauty to forgotten spaces, earning respect from artists who didn't even know her real name. Now it was all being weaponized against her by people who had never created anything meaningful in their lives. I need to think about it, Maya said, standing up from her table. You have until tomorrow, Brandon called after her as she walked away. And Maya? Don't even think about running. Everyone knows who you are. Now. Maya made it to the nearest bathroom before the tears started. She locked herself in a stall and let the emotions pour out: fear, anger, humiliation, and a deep sense of betrayal. She'd been so careful, so methodical about protecting her secret. But one moment of carelessness, one reflection in a window, and everything had fallen apart. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through social media, watching her two worlds collide in real time. #Ghost was trending locally, with students from Lincoln High posting screenshots and speculation. Some were impressed, others were mocking, but all of them were talking about her. Maya had gone from invisible to infamous in the span of 20 minutes. The rest of the school day passed in a haze. Teachers who had never noticed her before now looked at her with curiosity. Students pointed and whispered as she passed. She overheard fragments of conversation. Can you believe she's Ghost? I heard she makes thousands selling her art, but most of it felt surreal, like she was watching someone else's life unfold. When the final bell rang, Maya didn't head to the art room as usual. Instead, she walked home through back streets, avoiding the areas where she'd created her most famous pieces. The city looked different now that her secret was out, less like a canvas waiting for art, more like a collection of evidence that could be used against her. Her mother was at work, as usual, but she'd left a note on the kitchen counter. "Proud of you always, Mia. Whatever happens, remember that." Maya stared at the note, wondering if her mother had somehow heard about what happened at school. Elena Rodriguez had always been supportive of Maya's art, but she'd never known about the nighttime activities. Now that the secret was out, Maya would have to tell her everything. That evening, as Maya sat in her bedroom surrounded by canvases and sketchbooks, she tried to figure out her next move. She could comply with Brandon's demands, humiliate herself by decorating his car, and hope that would be enough to satisfy his need for power. Or she could refuse, face the legal consequences, and watch her dreams of art school disappear. But there was a third option, one that made her heart race with equal parts excitement and terror. She could stop being the invisible girl who let people walk all over her. She could show Brandon Walsh and his friends that Ghost wasn't just an artist, she was a force to be reckoned with. Maya pulled out her phone and began researching. She looked up property records, social media profiles, and school parking permits. If they wanted to play games, she'd show them what a real artist could do. When pushed too far, the quiet girl was done being quiet. The first thing Maya noticed when she woke up was the silence. No birds chirping outside her window, no sounds of her mother preparing for work in the kitchen. Just an unnatural quiet that made her stomach clench with anxiety. She reached for her phone and immediately understood why. 17 missed calls from her mother, 23 text messages, and a notification that made her blood run cold. "Your video has been viewed 2.3 million times." Maya sat up in bed, her heart pounding as she scrolled through the messages. Her mother's text started to get concerned and escalated to panic. "Maya, what is this video everyone is sending me? Call me immediately. I'm leaving work early. We need to talk." But it was the last message that made Maya's hands shake. "The police came to the hospital asking about you. I told them you were at school. Come home now." Maya's phone buzzed with an incoming call from her mother. She answered on the first ring. "Maya, thank God." Elena Rodriguez's voice was tight with worry. "Where are you? Are you safe?" "I'm home, Mom. I'm okay," Maya said, though she wasn't sure that was true. "What did the police want?" "They said there was an incident at school. Something about property damage." "Maya, what happened?" "People are sending me videos of you fighting, and I don't understand." "Mom, I can explain everything," Maya interrupted. "But not over the phone. When are you coming home?" "I'm in the car now, 20 minutes. Maya, promise me you won't leave the house until I get there." After hanging up, Maya forced herself to look at the video that had apparently gone viral overnight. The quality was grainy, shot from multiple angles by students who had been recording the cafeteria confrontation. But it was clear enough to show everything: Brandon's humiliation, Maya's explosive reaction, and the chaos that followed. The comment section was a battlefield. Some people were calling Maya a hero. Finally, someone stood up to those entitled Bullies. This girl is my new hero. Ghost has skills in more ways than one. But others were less supportive. She's clearly unstable. Violence is never the answer. This is why we need better security in schools. Maya's phone rang again. "Mrs. Chun." "Maya, are you all right?" "I just saw the video. The principal wants to see you first thing Monday morning." Maya's stomach dropped. "Am I in trouble?" "I don't know yet. But Maya, I need you to understand something. The competition judges have seen the video too. Dr. Williams from RISD called me this morning." Maya closed her eyes. Her dreams of art school were crumbling along with everything else. What did she say? She wants to meet with you in person. She's driving up from Providence this weekend. This wasn't what Maya had expected. She's coming here? Why? She said your portfolio piece is extraordinary, but she needs to understand who you are as a person. Maya, this could still work out in your favor, but you need to be prepared for some difficult questions. After Mrs. Chun hung up, Maya sat in the quiet of her bedroom, surrounded by the evidence of her double life. Canvases lined the walls, some displaying her classical training, others showing the raw energy of her street art influences. Spray paint cans were hidden in a box under her bed, along with photographs of her ghost pieces taken over the years. She pulled out a sketchbook and began drawing, letting her hands move automatically while her mind processed everything that had happened. The drawing that emerged was a self-portrait, but fragmented pieces of her face scattered across the page like a broken mirror, each fragment showing a different aspect of her identity. When her mother arrived home, Maya was waiting in the kitchen. Alina Rodriguez looked older than she had just 2 days ago, her face drawn with worry and exhaustion. She worked as a nurse at the city hospital, pulling double shifts to support them both since Maya's father had died. She didn't deserve this chaos in her life. "Show me," Elena said simply, sitting down across from Maya. Maya pulled out her phone and played the video, watching her mother's face as she saw her quiet daughter explode into violence. Elena's expression shifted from confusion to shock to something that looked almost like pride. "That boy," Elena said when the video ended, "he destroyed your painting?" 6 months of work, Maya said quietly. "My portfolio piece for art school." Elena was quiet for a long moment. "And the graffiti?" "This ghost person everyone's talking about." Maya nodded. "That's me. I've been doing it for 3 years. Mom, I know it's illegal, but I never hurt anyone. I only painted on walls that were already damaged, places that needed beauty." Elena stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city skyline. "Your father would have understood," she said finally. "He always said art chooses its own path. Are you angry?" Maya asked. "I'm angry at those children who humiliated you. I'm angry at the school system that let this happen. But you, Mia? You did what you had to do." That evening, Maya's phone continued to buzz with messages from numbers she didn't recognize. Some were supportive, others were threatening. A few claimed to be from reporters wanting interviews. But one message stood out from the rest. "Ghost, or should I say Maya, this is Phoenix. We need to talk. Meet me at the old textile mill tonight. Come alone." Maya stared at the message. Phoenix was a legend in the graffiti community, one of the original artists who had helped establish the scene in their city. She'd never met him in person, but she'd seen his work everywhere. He was known for his massive murals that combined political messages with stunning visual artistry. Against her better judgment, Maya decided to go. She waited until her mother was asleep, then slipped out of the house and made her way through the familiar streets to the abandoned textile mill. The building had been empty for decades, its windows boarded up and its walls covered in layers of graffiti from multiple generations of artists. Phoenix was waiting inside, standing in front of a massive mural that covered an entire wall. He was older than Maya had expected, maybe in his 30s, with paint-stained hands and eyes that seemed to see everything. "So you're the famous ghost," he said, his voice echoing in the empty space. "The mysterious artist who's been making waves in our community." "Not so mysterious anymore," Maya replied. Phoenix smiled. "That's not necessarily a bad thing. Do you know what happened after your video went viral?" Maya shook her head. 3 of your pieces were sold to private collectors. For real money, the kind of money that could pay for college. Maya's eyes widened. "What?" "That's the thing about being discovered," Phoenix said. "Sometimes it opens doors you never knew existed, but it also brings responsibilities. When you're anonymous, you only answer to yourself. When you're famous, you answer to everyone. He led her to a section of the wall where recent pieces were displayed. I've been watching your work for 2 years, he said. You have something special, a voice that's completely your own. But you've been playing it safe, staying hidden. Maybe it's time to step into the light. Maya looked around at the collection of art surrounding them. Every piece told a story, expressed an emotion, made a statement about the world. This was real art, created by people who had something to say and weren't afraid to say it. What do you think I should do? Maya asked. That depends. Are you an artist who happens to go to high school, or are you a high school student who happens to make art? Maya considered the question. For years, she'd seen herself as the latter, a student. First, with art as her escape. But everything that had happened in the past few days had forced her to confront the truth. Art wasn't just her hobby or her dream career. It was who she was. I'm an artist, she said finally. Phoenix nodded. Then start acting like one. Artists don't hide from the world, they engage with it. They take risks. They make people uncomfortable. They tell truths that others are afraid to hear. When Maya got home, she found her mother waiting in the kitchen with a cup of coffee and a serious expression. We need to talk about Monday, Elena said. The principal, the police, all of it. Maya sat down across from her mother, feeling more centered than she had in days. I know, and I'm ready. Are you? Because there could be consequences, real ones. Suspension, criminal charges, the end of your art school dreams. Maya looked at her mother, really looked at her. Elena Rodriguez had been raising her alone for 4 years, working impossible hours to keep them afloat, never complaining about the sacrifices she'd made. She deserved honesty. Mom, I spent 3 years being invisible because I thought it was safer. I let people ignore me, dismiss me, treat me like I didn't matter. And maybe that would have been fine if I was just a regular student. But I'm not. I'm an artist. An artist can't be invisible. Elena reached across the table and took Maya's hand. Then we face this together. Whatever happens on Monday, we handle it as a family. Maya squeezed her mother's hand, feeling a strength she hadn't known she possessed. The quiet girl who had tried to disappear into the background was gone. In her place was someone who understood that being seen, really seen, was worth the risk. Her phone buzzed with another message. This time it was from Mrs. Chun. Dr. Williams will be here Sunday at 2 p.m. She wants to see your portfolio piece and discuss your future. Maya, I think you might be surprised by what she has to say. Maya smiled, looking around the kitchen where she'd spent so many mornings in silence, afraid to take up space in the world. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, difficult conversations, and consequences she couldn't predict. But for the first time in her life, she felt ready to face them. The invisible girl was gone. The artist remained, and Maya Rodriguez was just getting started. Monday morning arrived with the weight of inevitability. Maya stood in front of her bedroom mirror, choosing her outfit with the same care a warrior might select armor for battle. Gone were the oversized hoodies and faded jeans she'd hidden behind for years. Instead, she wore a fitted black sweater that showcased a silver necklace her father had given her, a small paintbrush pendant that caught the light when she moved. Dark jeans without holes or paint stains, and boots that made confident sounds on the floor. Her reflection looked back at her with eyes that no longer sought to disappear. This was Maya Rodriguez, not trying to be invisible, not apologizing for taking up space. Just herself, completely and unapologetically. The walk to school felt different. Students who had never acknowledged her existence now turned to stare as she passed. Some pulled out phones to record her, others whispered to friends, but Maya kept her head up and her pace steady. She'd spent years studying these hallways from the shadows, learning every route and rhythm. Now she walked through them like she belonged there. Principal Davidson was waiting outside the main office when Maya arrived. He was a thin man in his 50s who'd always seemed more interested in managing the school's image than its students. His expression was carefully neutral, giving nothing away about what was to come. "Miss Rodriguez," he said formally, "thank you for being punctual. We have quite a bit to discuss." The conference room was more crowded than Maya had expected. Principal Davidson sat at the head of the table, flanked by the vice principal and the school's guidance counselor. A woman in a police uniform occupied one corner, her notepad already open. And at the far end of the table, somewhat to Maya's surprise, sat Mrs. Chun. "Please sit." Principal Davidson gestured to a chair that felt uncomfortably like being in the defendant's box. Maya sat down, placing her hands flat on the table. She'd learned from watching courtroom dramas that showing your hands was a sign of honesty and openness. "Let's begin with the facts," Principal Davidson said, consulting a thick folder. "On Friday afternoon, there was an altercation in the cafeteria between you and several other students. Property was destroyed, including what I understand was a valuable art piece. Violence occurred, and the entire incident was recorded and has since gone viral on social media platforms." He paused, looking at Maya over his glasses. "Do you dispute any of these facts?" "No," Maya said simply. "Can you explain to us what happened in your own words?" Maya took a breath. She'd rehearsed this moment over the weekend, thinking about how to tell her story without sounding defensive or making excuses. The truth was complicated, but it was all she had. "Brandon Walsh and his friends discovered that I'm the graffiti artist known as Ghost. They used that information to humiliate me publicly and blackmail me into doing degrading things for their entertainment. When Brandon destroyed my portfolio, 6 months of work that represented my application to art school, I reacted with anger." The police officer leaned forward. "And that reaction involved physical violence?" "Yes," Maya said. "I'm not proud of hitting him, but I'm not going to apologize for defending myself against people who were trying to destroy my future." Principal Davidson made notes in his folder. "Miss Rodriguez, Lincoln High has a zero-tolerance policy regarding violence. Regardless of the circumstances, physical assault cannot be overlooked." Maya felt her stomach drop, but she kept her expression steady. "I understand. However," Mrs. Chun spoke up for the first time, "we also need to address the bullying and harassment that led to this incident." Maya was targeted, humiliated, and had her personal property destroyed. That can't be overlooked either. The vice principal shuffled through some papers. "We've reviewed the video footage from multiple angles, as well as social media posts from the days leading up to the incident. While we can't condone violence, it's clear that Miss Rodriguez was responding to sustained harassment." Maya blinked, surprised by this turn. She'd expected to be expelled, possibly arrested. Instead, it seemed like the adults in the room were actually considering the context of what had happened. Principal Davidson continued, "After extensive discussion with the school board and legal counsel, we've decided on the following consequences. Brandon Walsh, Tiffany Chun, and Derek Morrison will face 2-week suspensions for harassment and destruction of personal property. They'll also be required to complete community service and undergo counseling regarding bullying behavior." Maya's eyes widened. She'd assumed the popular students would face minimal consequences while she bore the full weight of punishment. "As for you, Miss Rodriguez," Principal Davidson turned his attention back to her, "you'll receive a 3-day suspension for the physical altercation. However, given the circumstances and your previously spotless disciplinary record, this will not appear on your permanent academic file." The police officer closed her notepad. "The department has reviewed the case and determined that no criminal charges will be filed. However, I want to address the graffiti allegations." Maya's heart stopped. This was what she'd been most afraid of, criminal charges that could destroy her future completely. "We're aware of your reputation as the artist called Ghost," the officer continued. And while graffiti is technically vandalism, we've had multiple property owners come forward saying your work actually improved their buildings and increased property values. The Morrison Law Office specifically requested that your piece remain on their wall. Maya stared at her in disbelief. What? Apparently, Mr. Morrison's law firm has received several new clients who were attracted by what they called the artistic energy of the building. He's now commissioning you to create additional pieces for other properties he owns. The room fell silent. Maya tried to process what she was hearing. Instead of facing criminal charges, she was being offered legitimate work as an artist. Mrs. Chun smiled. There's more, Maya. Dr. Williams from RISD is waiting in my classroom. She flew up specifically to meet with you after seeing your portfolio piece and learning about your street art. Principal Davidson stood up. Miss Rodriguez, while I can't officially condone graffiti, I have to admit that your artistic talent is extraordinary. The school board has asked me to explore the possibility of adding a mural program where student artists could create legal public art around campus. Maya felt like she was in an alternate reality. A week ago, she'd been invisible. 3 days ago, her life had been falling apart. Now she was being offered opportunities she'd never dared to imagine. There's one more thing, Mrs. Chun said as they prepared to leave the conference room. Phoenix contacted me over the weekend. He wants to mentor you and help you transition into selling your work legally. Maya walked through the hallways toward the art room in a daze. Students still stared and whispered, but the energy felt different now. Instead of mockery or pity, she sensed something that looked almost like respect. Dr. Williams was exactly what Maya had imagined an art school professor would look like: silver hair pulled back in an elegant bun, paint-stained fingers adorned with interesting jewelry and eyes that seemed to see everything. She was standing in front of Maya's reconstructed portfolio piece, which Mrs. Chun had helped Maya repair over the weekend. Maya, she said, turning with a warm smile. I've been looking forward to meeting you. They shook hands, and Maya noticed that Dr. Williams had the firm grip of someone who worked with her hands. Your portfolio piece is remarkable, Dr. Williams said, gesturing toward the canvas. But what interests me even more is your street art. I've been following Ghost's work online for months, not knowing there was a connection to this application. Maya found her voice. Does that hurt my chances? The graffiti, I mean. Dr. Williams laughed. Hurt your chances? Maya, some of the most celebrated artists in history started as rebels who challenged conventional ideas about where art belongs. Banksy, Basquiat, Keith Haring, they all began in the streets. She walked closer to the canvas, studying the details. What I see in your work is someone who understands that art isn't just about technique or beauty. It's about communication. Your street pieces tell stories about your community. Your classical work shows technical mastery, and this portfolio piece brings them together in a way that's completely unique. Maya felt tears gathering in her eyes. For years she'd worried that her two artistic identities were incompatible, that serious art schools would reject her if they knew about her illegal activities. I want to offer you early admission to RISD, Dr. Williams continued. Full scholarship, based on your portfolio and your demonstrated ability to create meaningful art under challenging circumstances. Maya's knees went weak. She gripped the edge of a desk to steady herself. Are you serious? Completely, but I have one condition. Maya's heart sank. Of course there was a catch. I want you to continue your street art, but legally. Work with the city, with property owners, with community organizations. Use your talents to transform spaces in ways that bring people together instead of dividing them. Maya nodded rapidly. Yes, absolutely yes. Dr. Williams pulled out a business card. Classes start in January. That gives you time to finish high school and complete a few legal mural projects to add to your portfolio. I'll be in touch about the details. After Dr. Williams left, Maya sat alone in the art room, surrounded by canvases and possibilities. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "How did it go, Mia?" Maya typed back, "I got into art school, full scholarship. I'll explain everything when I get home." The response came immediately, "Your father would be so proud." Over the next few weeks, Maya's life transformed in ways she couldn't have imagined. The video of her confrontation with Brandon continued to circulate, but the narrative had shifted. Instead of being seen as a violent outburst, it was being celebrated as a moment when someone finally stood up to Bullies. Articles appeared in local newspapers about the ghost artist who had been creating beautiful murals around the city for years. Art blogs picked up the story, praising her work and discussing the intersection between street art and academic training. A gallery downtown asked to display some of her pieces in a group show featuring emerging artists. But the most meaningful change was in how Maya moved through the world. She no longer hunched her shoulders or avoided eye contact. When classmates approached her, and they did now, constantly, she engaged in conversations instead of mumbling responses and hurrying away. Brandon Walsh returned from his suspension a different person. The viral video had brought unwanted attention to his family, and his father's business connections had made it clear that public displays of bullying were bad for everyone's image. He avoided Maya completely, which suited her fine. Tiffany Chun, surprisingly, approached Maya one afternoon after art class. "I wanted to apologize," she said, her usual confidence replaced by something that looked like genuine regret. "What we did was cruel. I was jealous of your talent, and I took it out on you in the worst possible way." Maya studied her for a moment. "Thank you for saying that. Also," Tiffany continued, "I wanted you to know that your piece on 5th Street, the one with the butterfly woman, helped me. I was going through some stuff with my parents' divorce, and seeing that every day on my way to school reminded me that beautiful things can come from broken places." Maya felt a warmth spread through her chest. This was why she created art, not for fame or recognition, but for moments like this when her work touched someone's life in a meaningful way. The mural program at Lincoln High became reality in November. Maya was commissioned to create the first piece, a large wall near the main entrance that had been blank and uninspiring for decades. She chose to paint a diverse group of students, each engaged in different activities that represented the school's various programs: sports, theater, music, science, and art. But instead of making it a simple, realistic portrait, Maya incorporated elements from her street art style. The figures seemed to emerge from swirling backgrounds of color that suggested movement and energy. Hidden within the abstract elements were symbols representing different cultures and communities, making the piece a celebration of diversity and inclusion. The unveiling drew crowds from throughout the district. Local news stations covered the event, interviewing Maya about her journey from anonymous street artist to commissioned muralist. When asked about her message to other students who felt invisible or overlooked, Maya's response was simple and direct: "Your voice matters. Your art matters. Don't let anyone convince you to make yourself smaller just to make others comfortable. The world needs what you have to offer." Phoenix attended the unveiling, standing in the back of the crowd with a proud smile. Afterward, he approached Maya with an offer that would have seemed impossible just months before. "I'm putting together a collective of street artists who want to work legally," he said. "Community murals, business commissions, public art projects. We're calling it Visible Voices. Interested in being a founding member?" Maya didn't hesitate. "Yes." December brought college acceptance letters. Though Maya's future was already secured at RISD, she also received offers from 3 other prestigious art schools, all of whom had heard about her story and wanted to recruit her. The girl who had once worried about being noticed was now being courted by institutions across the country. On the last day of classes before winter break, Maya stood in the art room where her journey had truly begun. Mrs. Chun was packing up supplies, preparing for the holiday break. Any regrets? Mrs. Chun asked, watching Maya organize her portfolio pieces. Maya considered the question seriously. 6 months ago, she would have said she regretted the confrontation, regretted the violence, regretted being exposed. But now she understood that everything that had happened, even the painful parts, had been necessary for her growth. No regrets, Maya said finally. I spent too many years trying to be invisible. Sometimes you have to break things apart before you can build them back stronger. Double quotes. Mrs. Chun smiled. Your father would be proud of the woman you've become. That evening, Maya walked through the city streets where her transformation had begun. She passed the textile factory where her ghost identity had been revealed, the buildings where her early pieces still brought color to forgotten corners, and the spots where she was now planning legal murals for the coming year. Her phone buzzed with a message. From Elena. Dinner's ready, Mia. Come home. Maya smiled, looking up at the city lights beginning to twinkle in the gathering darkness. Home. For the first time in years, that word felt completely right. Not because she was hiding there, but because she was choosing to return to it as herself, fully visible, completely authentic, and ready for whatever came next. The invisible girl was gone forever. In her place stood an artist who understood that true strength didn't come from hiding in shadows, but from stepping boldly into the light and showing the world exactly who you were meant to be. Maya Rodriguez walked home through streets that would soon be decorated with her art, carrying dreams that no longer felt too big to achieve, surrounded by a future that stretched out before her like a blank canvas waiting for the first bold stroke of color. But her story was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. 3 months later, Maya stood on a scaffolding 20 feet above the ground, putting the finishing touches on her largest mural yet. The entire side of the downtown library now displayed a stunning piece that told the story of literacy through the ages' ancient scribes, transitioning into modern students, with books transforming into digital devices, all connected by flowing rivers of words that seemed to dance across the brick surface. Looking good up there, Ghost, called a voice from below. Maya looked down to see Marcus Washington, a reporter from the city newspaper who had been following her story since the school incident. What had started as a simple human interest piece had evolved into a regular column tracking the transformation of public spaces through community art. It's Maya now, she called back, wiping sweat from her forehead. Ghost was the invisible version. The scaffolding creaked slightly as Phoenix climbed up to join her. Over the past months, he had become not just a mentor, but a genuine friend. Their working relationship had evolved into something deeper, a shared vision of what art could accomplish when it brought communities together rather than simply decorating walls. The city council approved our proposal, Phoenix said, settling beside her on the narrow platform. 12 more murals across 4 neighborhoods. They're calling it the Visible Voices Initiative. Maya's brush paused mid-stroke. All 12? All 12. Plus they want to establish a permanent fund for community art projects. Maya, you've helped change how this entire city thinks about public art. The irony wasn't lost on her. The girl who had spent years trying to be invisible had become the catalyst for making art more visible throughout her community. But it was more than just aesthetics. The murals were creating gathering spaces, sparking conversations between neighbors who had never spoken before, and giving young people alternatives to destructive forms of expression. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from Elena. Dinner with the Rodriguez family, plus our newest member. Phoenix is invited too. Maya smiled. Elena had essentially adopted Phoenix as a surrogate son, insisting he join them for Sunday dinners and holidays. He'd become the older brother Maya had never had, someone who understood both her artistic vision and the challenges of growing up feeling like an outsider. My mom wants you for dinner again, Maya told him. Your mom makes the best enchiladas in the city, Phoenix replied. I'm not stupid enough to turn that down. As they climbed down from the scaffolding, Maya noticed a small crowd had gathered to watch her work. This had become routine. People would stop to observe the creative process, often staying for hours to see a piece evolve. Some brought children, using the murals as impromptu art lessons. Others took photos to share on social media, helping spread awareness of the community art movement. An elderly woman approached as Maya packed up her supplies. Excuse me, are you the artist? Maya nodded. Yes, ma'am. I wanted to thank you, the woman said, her voice thick with emotion. My grandson was heading down a bad path, drugs, gangs, but he saw your work and started drawing again. He's applied to art school now and says he wants to be like you. These moments still caught Maya off guard. She'd started creating street art as a form of personal expression, never imagining it could influence other people's life choices. But story after story had emerged of young people who'd been inspired by her example to pursue their own creative dreams. What's his name? Maya asked. Antonio Martinez. He's 17, like you were when you started. Maya pulled out her phone. I'm teaching a workshop next weekend for high school students interested in mural painting. It's free, and we provide all the supplies. Tell Antonio he's welcome to join us. The woman's face lit up. Really? He would be so excited. As they exchanged contact information, Maya felt Phoenix watching her with an amused expression. What? She asked when the woman left. Do you realize what you've become? He said, you're not just an artist anymore. You're a community leader, a mentor, an inspiration. That's a lot of responsibility for someone who's not even 18 yet. Maya considered this as they walked toward her car. She'd bought the used Honda Civic with money from her first legitimate art sale, a small canvas piece that had sold for $3,000 at a local gallery. It wasn't much compared to what established artists commanded, but for a teenager from a working class family, it represented independence and validation. I don't feel like a leader, Maya said honestly. Most of the time I still feel like the quiet girl who just wants to make art. That's what makes you a good leader, Phoenix replied. You remember what it feels like to be overlooked, so you make sure other people get seen. The drive home took them through several neighborhoods where Maya's work was displayed. Each piece told a different story, reflected different community values, and addressed different local issues. There was a mural at the community center that celebrated local heroes, teachers, firefighters, nurses, and volunteers who made daily differences in people's lives. The piece at the youth center depicted young people engaged in positive activities, from sports to science to arts. The memorial wall that honored residents who had died too young transformed from a site of grief into a place of remembrance and hope. Hey, Phoenix said as they stopped at a red light. I've been meaning to ask you something. Maya glanced over at him. What's up? There's a documentary filmmaker who wants to tell your story. Like your whole story from Ghost to the school incident to where you are now. She thinks it could inspire other young artists to find their voices. Maya's stomach tightened. The thought of having her entire life examined and broadcast felt overwhelming. I don't know. That seems like a lot. Think about it, Phoenix said. You don't have to decide right now. But your story is powerful, Maya. And there are probably thousands of kids out there who feel invisible, just like you did. Maybe hearing about your journey could help them find their own way. When they arrived at Maya's house, the smell of Elena's cooking greeted them before they even reached the front door. The small two-bedroom home had become a gathering place. For Maya's extended chosen family, Phoenix, Mrs. Chen, Marcus the reporter, and various other artists and mentors who had become part of their lives. Perfect timing, Elena called from the kitchen. I just finished the enchiladas. Over dinner, conversation flowed between English and Spanish, covering everything from Maya's latest commission to covering Phoenix's plans for expanding the Visible Voices Collective to other cities. Chun shared updates about the school mural program, which had now spread to 3 other high schools in the district. "I have news," Maya announced as they cleared the dinner dishes. "Our ISD wants me to start this summer instead of waiting until fall. They're offering me a spot in their intensive pre-college program." Elena's face lit up. "Mia, that's wonderful." "It means leaving earlier than planned," Maya continued. "But it also means I'll have a head start on my degree, and I'll be able to work with some of their graduate students on community art projects." Phoenix raised his glass of water in a toast to Maya Rodriguez, who proves that the best way to find yourself is to help others do the same. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Maya found herself alone with her mother in the kitchen. Elena was washing dishes, humming softly the same lullaby she'd sung when Maya was small. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course, Mia." "Do you ever worry that I'm changing too fast? That I'm becoming someone you don't recognize?" Elena dried her hands and turned to face her daughter. "Maya, the person you are now, confident, generous, brave, that's who you always were inside. The only thing that's changed is that you're not hiding anymore." She reached up to touch Maya's face. "Your father always said that our job as parents wasn't to shape you into who we thought you should be, but to help you become who you were meant to be. I think we succeeded." That night, Maya sat in her bedroom surrounded by acceptance letters, commission requests, and sketches for future projects. Her walls, once covered with art that no one else could see, now displayed photographs of her public murals alongside personal pieces that friends and family had requested. She pulled out her phone and called Dr. Williams at RISD. "Maya," Dr. Williams answered on the second ring. "I was hoping to hear from you." "I want to accept the summer program," Maya said. "But I have a condition." Dr. Williams chuckled. "You're learning to negotiate. That's good. What's your condition?" "I want to continue working with the Visible Voices Collective during the school year. Maybe we could establish a partnership between RISD and community art organizations here. Students could get credit for public art projects." "That's not a condition," Dr. Williams said. "That's a brilliant idea. Let's make it happen." After hanging up, Maya walked to her window and looked out at the city she'd helped transform. Lights twinkled in buildings where her art brought color to concrete walls. In a few months, she'd leave for art school, but she'd return regularly to continue the work she'd started here. Her phone buzzed with a message from Antonio Martinez, the teenager whose grandmother had approached her earlier. "Ms. Rodriguez, I can't wait for the workshop. I've been practicing every day. Thank you for believing in someone you've never met." Maya typed back, "See you Saturday. Bring your sketches." As she prepared for bed, Maya thought about the documentary filmmaker Phoenix had mentioned. Maybe it was time to share her story more widely. Not because she wanted fame or attention, but because visibility had taught her something important. When you step into the light, you make it easier for others to do the same. The invisible girl was gone, replaced by someone who understood that true artistry wasn't just about creating beautiful things. It was about creating space for other people to discover their own voices, their own strength, their own power to transform the world around them. Maya Rodriguez had found her voice. Now she was ready to help others find theirs. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.